Remember what the goal of the narcissistic person is in a relationship: to get supply, right? So if they want someone's supply, they meet someone new that they want to date or they're interested in or want to flirt with. They have a business associate or investor they want to win over. When they want something from someone or they want something to look a certain way, they know what to do. And this is what upsets and angers people in these relationships. You're like, they know what to do. I'm watching them do it with someone else. Why can't they do it with me? I'm like, because they don't want your supply. They want their supply. And so they're not going to do it. It's like, I'm not going to give someone $1 for something I don't want to buy, but I'm going to give it to someone else when I want to buy it. That's how they are with supply. And so yes, they know what to do. This idea of mirroring though nails it, because it's as though they know what, like, the pleases and the thank yous and the listening and the or that sounds hard. It's like putting on a show or putting on a play, and it's actually falls into something we call cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is sort of like Splenda to sugar kind of thing. It's not the real thing, and it doesn't feel or taste as good. And so it's more of it's the knowing what empathy is, knowing like, I'm supposed to listen to this person and I'm supposed to tell them I feel bad I'm supposed to like really tell them they're great. I'm supposed to, right? And in fact, ironically, people who are narcissistic will often cry at movies, but yet then you'll be in real life with them. You're like, this is like real pain 6 inches from you, and you're crying about a random person in a movie? Because when emotion is in their space, they're threatened by it, because they don't feel like they can manage it. But when it's a story, remember, they do have a lot of emotion in them. That's a safer place to express it. And people misread that. Oh, they cried at the movie. What a sweet, emotional person. I'm like, no, it's cognitive empathy. Booby prize.
Explain. I think this is also fascinating because there's such that initial part in a relationship with a narcissist that probably in almost anyone, but definitely more of a romantic one, where, the love bombing. And so, this love bombing, devalue, discard, Hoover sort of loop. I think this would be fascinating for people to understand, but especially that love bombing stuff.
So the love bombing it's a grandiose show, often grandiose, but not always. And I'll explain the not always. But it's this intense attention the narcissist will pay in the early part of a relationship. Frequent texting, never met anyone like this. I feel a magical connection to you. They use this grandiose, non-specific language. You're sort of swept away. It can feel very romantic. If they've got the means, they may send you flowers or gifts or come up with elaborate experiences. What it's all doing, in a way, it's blinding a person to the red flags. All of this excitement's happening. You may be missing sort of that they sometimes are a little distracted on their phone, or they're still doing some shady stuff, or they don't regulate themselves. It showed up late, or they're sort of rude to a person who valet parked their car or something like that, that you'll say, oh, well, no, I'm overthinking it. Or maybe I'm the one who's afraid of commitment. I finally found someone who's paying attention to me, and now I'm trying to find red flags. There's something wrong with me. And whereas I'm thinking, yeah, no, red flag's a red flag. What's interesting is that the other thing that can happen during love bombing is there can be this really intense of like, tell me your deepest fear. And you know why they're taking all that? They're putting it in a backpack so they can use it against you.
Exactly.
You think you're entering this deep, intimate space with someone, and you're basically handing them the knives they're going to use to stab you with.
And then when you ask for their deepest, it's nothing. You get nothing.
No, it's nothing. Or they give you a falsehood, because then it won't hurt them if you did actually attempt to hit them back with it. So another way love bombing can happen is they will present a very overly victimized story of their lives. Like, my life has been so hard. My life has been so tough. And rescuers will say, oh my gosh, you need a place to live. Come move in with me. Or you need a car. Like, I don't always use my car. And before you know it, there's people who are actually now turning around, and covert narcissists tend to play that game a little bit more, very victimized love bombing. And people feel like, I want to rescue them. And they really do well with people who are hyper empaths. So that's the love bombing phase. That can last anywhere, usually for 6 weeks to 3 months. I've heard people telling me it's lasted for 5 years. I've heard it lasting for 6 to 12 months, but usually somewhere in the neighborhood, maybe 3 to 4 months is about average, because that's about all they can keep it up for. Then and a lot of people will even be resistant and say like, oh, they're so into me. I can, I can even I could be chilling, or I can play this game with them. But then what will happen is they'll start losing a little steam. You're like, okay, I'm into you. And you move things too fast. Narcissistic relationships, more often than not, move too fast. People move in too fast. They get engaged too fast. They talk about marriage too fast. They travel together too fast. They move to another city too fast, too fast. And why? Because the narcissist needs to get you to the point where they can devalue you. Once you agree to them, they have, believe it or not, such low self-esteem. They're like, oh, if you want to be with me, you can't be all that, is actually probably what's happening deep inside of them. But what they have you is they have you where they need you. Your narcissistic supply is starting to get a little bit stale because you're not something they need to fight for. You're not feeding their ego. So now they may have a roving eye. They may be much more distractible. They may be much more likely to point out your flaws. But at this point, a person still feels very much in love. Now they're justifying. Then we go to the discard. Now, the devalue phase can last for years, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. That's all those forms of abuse that we
Years
talk
and
about.
years.
Gaslighting, that's the
Right.
manipulation, that's
Yep.
all of it.
Now, the discard may or may not be a breakup. A lot of people think, does discard mean they move out? No, not necessarily. Discard may mean they go and have an affair and they're very much out of the relationship. The discard may mean that really they've become so neglectful they don't even know you're alive. Like they just don't care. They don't care about anything about you. The discard may be you wanting to leave the relationship, ironically, because you've had it. But it's either a relationship rupture or it's you have been literally replaced. And you're sitting there thinking like, okay, let's go to counseling since you're having your 10th affair kind of thing. And so that's discard. At the discard phase, either they've left, you've left, or there's been a split. There's been a split. Well, now the narcissistic person who doesn't like abandonment and doesn't like not being in control, now you can start the hoovering process, which maybe the narcissist even went and had an affair or even found a new relationship. Well, you know, that's not going to last forever. Or they don't like the idea that you're moving on with your life. So you'll get that late night text, baby, I'm just thinking about you, or miss you. Or you'll get what I always call the anniversary date hoover. Maybe it is your anniversary. Maybe it's a birthday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, some other holiday. And they'll use that of thinking about you on New Year's Eve. They'll use those as entry points. And those can often be lonely times for people. That then starts to hoover back in. And then the whole cycle starts again. Now, not everybody's hoovered. And some people out there think, I wasn't hoovered. Was I not even good enough to be hoovered? I'm like, count yourself amongst the lucky. Be glad. Sometimes the hoover happens 5 and 10 years later, where hopefully a person sort of moved on and healed. But that's the cycle. And so, you know, I always say to people, if you really want to have like a fling with a narcissist, it's like eating the top off a cupcake. Go for it. Just get out in 6 weeks, you know, and then you're out before there's been any damage and maybe you had a good time. But the longer you're in, the more the narcissistic person, frankly, is going to view that they need to control you. So if you try to leave during the love bombing phase, you're going to be either heavily hoovered or they're going to do a smear campaign on you. And they're going to speak disparagingly of you on social media to maybe mutual people you know. So there's really no winning in this. So in all seriousness, you don't even need the top of a cupcake. The minute you see the red flags, get out while the getting's good.